My name's Ilakkiya. I just finished my bachelor's degree in genetics at Purdue University, and I'll be starting my PhD in genetics and genomics in the University of Michigan this fall. There weren't a lot of women in STEM from my family that I could look to as role models. I'm one of the first who's really completing my bachelor's degree, and I'm going into a research field which no one else has done. The closest I can say is that I have relatives who are surgeons, but so most of my science mentors or women role models came from school and college. A lot of the more significant role models that I have now were my lab PI, which means principal investigator. So she was the head of our lab, and her name's Janice Evans. And she was a really great model to show me how you can achieve a lot in science. And she's currently the department head for the biological sciences department at Purdue. And she's the first woman head of that department. It's been men so far since that department started. She's been a really great role model, someone I've been looking up to a lot. I would say I'm fortunate enough that I didn't overtly feel any sort of discrimination or stereotyping happening against me. And in fact, I think it was a little bit of the opposite problem. There's something called the model minority myth, where a minority group is purported to be the model for what you would want a minority group to look like. And sometimes Indian students or students of Indian origin are stereotyped as being highly academic or more motivated to do academic things. And so that kind of stereotype, if anything, put me in a place where I was expected to do well in science in those classes compared to maybe other groups and other women of color. I think for students who have different identities and their involvement in STEM and stereotypes against them would kind of harder if you're not already stereotyped to be good at academics, that you need to do more and you need to prove yourself more to let others know and for others to recognize and pay attention that you are capable of performing well in STEM. It might require more effort from you if you don't look like the stereotypical version of what a person who goes into STEM looks like, to show that you would be just as capable of succeeding in STEM. So that might mean putting more effort into group projects, trying to be more vocal than your peers, doing more to take notes or stay organized and keep the group moving forward. And I guess that's the problem with any stereotype, right? You have to work harder to prove that it's not true, because most people have that stereotype of what you look like and what that means about you and what you can do that you'll need to overcome. In high school, I was involved in a lot of STEM classes. I knew that I liked science coming into high school already. Outside of class, I was involved in Science Olympiad starting in 10th grade. And in that, I competed in a lot of biology related events, as well as some of the more experimental based events in Science Olympiad. I wasn't on the engineering or building side of Science Olympiad, so I did a lot of tests. For Science Olympiad events, most of them are partners, so it's in pairs. You work with another person. So if I was working with a guy as my partner, depending on our level of seniority, most of the guys I ended up working with were above me, like they were juniors and seniors or the grade above me. So they already had more experience in competing in those Science Olympiad events. And so they would take the reins more in terms of preparing materials for that event and practicing and stuff like that. And I kind of felt like I was just tailing along. But in groups where both of us were in the same grade and had the same experience level with a given event, I would say that the work was more even and there was less of a need to try and actively push to share something or include something and try to essentially rock the boat instead of going with the flow. I majored in genetics at Purdue University, and I also did 2 minors in chemistry and psychology. And what got me interested in that field and what gave me the motivation for it was a 10th grade class that I took in genetics. I was lucky that my high school offered a course specific to genetics, and I really loved everything that I learned in that subject. I knew that I already liked biology and I liked chemistry too, and genetics was just the perfect way to combine them. And DNA explains a lot of what goes on in our body, and now there's even more that we're figuring out about genetics and epigenetics, and there's just so much in that field. So learning about that in 10th grade got me really excited about making sure that this was a field I wanted to go into, because I had an interest in biology, but that class solidified that genetics was the way that I wanted to go. And a childhood career aspiration of mine was to be a veterinarian. And so when I was applying for colleges, I still had in mind that I wanted to go to vet school after completing my bachelor's degree. So I wanted to mention that in my essays and application, and that was my focus. I only chose universities that also had a veterinary school or a vet-related focus. But I didn't want to narrow my scope too much by taking a major like animal sciences, where that would very much limit me to either using that major for veterinary medicine, but not much else outside of it. And I already really like genetics. So genetics was the major that I chose when I was applying for these, with in mind, or having in mind that I want to go on a pre-vet track. So having that class and doing well in my biology and chemistry classes, and my teachers recognizing that I was a good student in those classes and showing that they recognized that by writing me good letters of recommendation when I was applying for college, that's kind of what gave me the confidence and motivation that, you know, I could follow my passion, and others recognize that I would probably be good at it too. One of the exciting collaborations and connections between genetics and the arts that I would say, and generally science and the arts, is scientific illustration. So that's where you use your artistic skills and your graphic designing skills to illustrate biological concepts, chemical compounds, physical forces, and those kind of illustrations can make it very much engaging for students to learn and make even research articles more interesting to look at and visually pleasing. And so that requires a good eye for color, designs, and like spacing and stuff like that to make very interesting pictures. I mean, humans are humans regardless of the field that you go into. Just because you're in a more academic field like science or STEM, it doesn't mean that principles like having colors and visually pleasing information is less valuable in these fields. People still like a story, people still like something pretty to look at. And so scientific illustration is extremely cool, and it's a field all on its own. You know, there's majors for scientific illustration in some universities that you can go into. And I think that's one of the coolest ways that genetics and arts is related. And any videos and visualizations you see are a result of art in a way too. Like, how do we colorize an image? How do we make something look 3D? How do we animate motion that we see in cells happening in a video so other people can understand it? So I'd say that's a big way. There's probably a lot of other smaller ways that I can't think of right off the top of my head. So it's a bit hard to predict what my day as a PhD student might be like until I get there. It's going to be a steep learning curve to jump directly from a bachelor's to a PhD, but at least what I can tell right now is I have 1 or 2 classes each day. The class is about an hour long, and then surrounding that time is time for me to go to a research lab, the one that I'm rotating in or doing my research in. And I guess every day would require planning the previous day to figure out what are the experiments I want to do, especially working with biological specimens. They operate on their own time scale, and you operate based on that. So sometimes an experiment needs to go for 8 hours, 4 hours, a specific time point. So you need to plan the previous day. When are you going to do different experiments throughout your day based on the other commitments you have? So if I have a class in the middle of the day, I need to plan out, okay, which experiments am I going to start in the morning? Which ones can I start right before class? Attend class, come back and finish it up. Making sure that I have perhaps like a series of 2 days to do an experiment that takes that long, and do I have the time to do that? So I'm going to probably spend around 8 hours in a day in my research lab. My first year as a PhD student, that'll be different. I won't be expected to spend 8 hours in my lab because I'm still rotating through different labs to figure out which one I want to commit to for the rest of my PhD. So I'll spend 8 hours of my day, including classes on campus, either in research or doing classes. And then towards the end of the day, I'm going to probably go home, catch up on any work that I need to do for my classes, or read any material related to the research project that I'm doing, because part of it is guided by the principal investigator, and they'll tell you what questions and what experiments you are going to be using to answer those questions. But part of it is also self-driven. Given an area of research that's going on in that lab, what questions can I propose? What are the areas I'm interested in? Is there a new experiment I can do to get better data about a given question compared to older data sets? So I might do work related to that while I'm at home, and then probably just wind down for the day, do things that I enjoy. So that's what I predict my PhD life will be like. Hopefully that's the truth and it's not more busy than that.
And the last question I'd love to end off with is, what does a female role model mean to you? Being one, once you've had in your life, what does that really mean to you?
Having a female role model is simply amazing. So the research lab that I was in my bachelor's degree was all women. Like, our PI was a woman, our postdoc was a woman, our master student was a woman, the bachelor students were women. It's only now that I've left that we've had a guy join our lab. And so it's been amazing kind of being in that environment, because not only do we relate on the projects and the questions that we're working on, but any concerns I have outside of that, related to classes or research or just being a woman in general and experiences that we have, it's more easy to talk about that and share about that and get feedback and feel more kinship. And it's really awesome to see women from my lab standing on stages, giving presentations, giving poster presentations. It's inspiring to see them achieve a lot, and it makes me motivated to achieve just like them. And so having a female role model means that I'm motivated by their achievements to achieve the same success for me. And having a good female role model means that they're able to promote and motivate and, I guess, support your success, even if it is different from what they're doing. The lab that I was in was a reproductive biology lab, but I want to go more into genetics and gene regulation. And that didn't prohibit them from being my #1 supporters and helping me out in every venture and always showing up to help and being open, having an open door for me to walk in and talk to them about any concerns that I had. So those are like huge bonuses that I got with having female role models.
Absolutely, we completely agree. Ilakkiya, it's been really great speaking with you and hearing about your journey as you're directly, participating in the STEM field and the research side especially. I'm hearing about the challenges and the successes you've had. So it's been really great speaking with you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really glad that I got to talk to you all. And if you want to reach out to me and talk to me directly about anything, my email is just my first name, ILAKKIYA @umich.edu. So please feel free to shoot me an email if you want to talk more.
Thank you.